Okay. So, Marvel animation sucks. Yeah, I know. Not exactly breaking new ground on that one. A few exceptions to the rule notwithstanding, animation seems to be one particular genre in which Marvel has never quite been able to pull their heads out of their butts. I'm still salty about them axing Wolverine and the X-Men after one season, and for canceling Spectacular Spider-Man and Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, only to replace them with stuff I'd be embarrassed to have playing in the background while I was sitting on the toilet. Sure, they won over some skeptics with X-Men 97, which I was very hot and cold on, but plenty of other fans liked, and regardless of how that show turned out, at least you could tell there was effort involved. So you figure, maybe this was a sign that Marvel was at least heading in the right direction with their animated content. Then this happened. The trailer was so bad I almost thought Marvel had intentionally crapped out something with AI to play an elaborate prank on all of us. I mean, this couldn't possibly be the real show, could it? Any self-respecting entertainment studio as big as Marvel would be too embarrassed to even release something like this. And wow, did I give them too much credit. No matter how bad you may think your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is, trust me, it's worse. My expectations for this thing were pretty much non-existent by the time the first 2 episodes dropped, but even in this current year malaise of Marvel mediocrity, I didn't see this one coming. Virtually every aspect of this show makes me think it was made by a bunch of shameless idiots and ideologues who have little to no knowledge of Spider-Man, have no idea how to write a good, compelling, or even competent story, were just taking an I need to make rent this month gig, and have only ever read comic books begrudgingly. And you can tell, because everywhere you turn, you see things that are painfully awkward, nonsensical, just plain wrong, or were probably done with the intent to piss people off. And you know they must be in trouble when even the show's lead actor is calling attention to this stuff. Reference an interview with Collider where Hudson Thames, who voices Peter Parker, does damage control, aka hype, for the show. My biggest fear was it was going to be annoying and woke. And you can stop reading right there because that tells you everything you need to know. He calls attention to all the stuff any viewer who isn't in Disney Marvel's pocket could see the show was riddled with, and then he's like, oh, but don't worry guys, it's not like that at all. Can I get my paycheck now, please? And the spin doctoring didn't stop there, because right after this, the showrunner hopped on Reddit claiming that he's pretty sure Thames just misspoke, as if there's no basis for his annoying and woke comment at all, which, having seen the show now, there is. And that's just for starters. Now, as I understand it, the show was originally gonna follow MCU Peter Parker in his earliest days of superheroing before the events of Captain America Civil War. But at some point, the writers threw that idea out, presumably because they didn't want to be hamstrung by MCU continuity, so they could have free reign to animate their Marvel-themed fanfiction that even the writers of What If would probably think twice about. Now, the show is playing the multiverse card, I'm assuming, and follows a different Peter Parker, picking up right before what used to be the events of Civil War, but then branches off in a much stupider direction. And not just with the story, by the way. I mean, with everything. Nearly every decision that was made here, be it creative or in terms of production, feels wrong to me. And it's just the tip of the iceberg, but holy moly, the aesthetics of this show are complete garbage. I don't know what your typical animated series costs these days, but this one definitely looks like it was made on the cheap. The animation is not good. It seems to be some awkward combination of old school inspired designs crossed with stuff done on computers. And by computers, I mean, it looks like they took unused stock footage from Archer, covered it with really terrible PS2 level CG, and then hit export before it finished rendering. There's nothing impressive about the visuals at all. Quite the opposite. The coloring is basic and bland, the characters move really stiffly, and the faces have all the expressiveness of a Ruby Rose acting showcase. Also, the production seems to have cut corners. There's one scene where Peter's doing an internship at Oscorp. His asshole boss tells the interns to solve the equation on the whiteboard, and the whiteboard is completely blank. Awesome attention to detail, guys.
Nailed it.
Then we've got the art style, which is easily one of the worst things about this. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the way it's directed, but in creating the look of the show, it's pretty clear that they wanted to ape the style of the original 1960s comics. You see a lot of visuals that kind of harken back to that stuff, especially in the title sequence, but at the same time, they also tried to clumsily infuse it with a lot of modern sensibilities and flavor, and the two things do not fit together. So what you end up with is this awkward, anachronistic mishmash that looks weirdly, intentionally old-fashioned because it's emulating a style of art that was more crude, more basic, and less detailed than what we have today, but instead of coming off as retro in a fun way like X-Men 97 managed to do, it just looks cheap and half-assed. Or just plain bad in the case of the intro title sequence, where they take the classic, iconic Spider-Man theme song and turn it into this insufferable, cringy as f*** rap track because, you know, modern audiences like rap, and it's so f***ing bad, it made me think the creators of the show must have lost a bet or something.
N-E-R-D, the people in my city, they call me Spidey.
I don't want to.
And speaking of modern sensibilities, Jesus Christ, we need to talk about the character designs. I don't know who was responsible for this, but whoever was must have gotten hired based on a portfolio of fan art from one of the cringier corners of Tumblr that I've long since decided to stay away from for the sake of my mental health. They also seem to have some really predictable ideas about masculinity, femininity, body types, gender, things like that. Stop me if any of this sounds familiar. Our hero and main character, Peter Parker, looks to be about 5'0". The girl he's crushing on has bigger muscles and is about 6 inches taller than him. Harry Osborn, I swear to God, looks like a trans woman. And outside of Peter and Aunt May, just about any white character who could be race-bent or gender-swapped, or both, has been. But don't worry, there are some traditionally masculine-looking male characters in there, the most prominent one being the dude Peter gets cucked by, which is probably the only reason why that was done. At least they did us the courtesy of not naming him Paul. Now, yes, Peter Parker is a science nerd, kind of a social outcast, was bullied in school, so on paper, none of this should be too out of the ordinary, but they lean really hard into certain aspects of it, to the point where it seems designed not to make us relate to Peter or sympathize with Peter, but to laugh at him. He finds out that the girl he's been nuts about for years has a boyfriend, he's crushed by this, then he meets the boyfriend, and in the very next scene, he's talking about what an awesome, cool, amazing person this guy is. Wow, he's actually really cool. He's smart, he's funny, he's super nice, we listen to the same bands. I totally see why my crush would want to go out with him. Maybe if I play my cards right, they'll let me watch while they make out. Peter, bro, he's dating the girl you like. You don't have to transform completely into a human doormat. Yeah, he seems to be a good guy, and that's cool, that's fine. But it's okay to dislike him a little bit, even if it's just being annoyed that he doesn't have anything to dislike about him. You can take a minute to stew on this. We were all teenagers once, trust me. We get it. So yeah, that's the mindset of the writers apparently. They're playing up the pathetic, awkward nerd stuff, I guess for comedic effect, which falls completely flat, but it doesn't make sense for a guy who, one, we're supposed to root for, and two, has the proportionate strength and agility of a spider, not to mention that handy early warning Spidey sense, or Peter Tingle as the movies are calling it now, and yet he's constantly bumping into things he shouldn't bump into, getting surprised by things he shouldn't be surprised by, not noticing things he should see coming a mile away, also doing really stupid things that a guy who, by the way, is supposed to be a genius really should know better than to do. So I'm not sure if the writers did this to Peter because humiliating classic male characters is the agenda in Hollywood right now, or if the writers are just really, really dumb. Sadly, it's most likely both. And the agenda-driven stuff really stands out here. Clearly, when Hudson Thames said the show wasn't woke, that was a f***ing lie. Hell, this might be the most woke project Marvel Studios has produced. You can practically see the writers bending over backwards to check every box they could think of with this show. Racist white people, cucked main male character, effeminate men, one-dimensional asshole men, perfect women, black characters being the bestest ever, more representation, male characters getting gender-swapped, white characters getting race-bent. Toss in a few other things that tend to go hand in hand with these types of projects, and you should start getting a pretty good picture. And in case anybody wants to clip this part and post it somewhere out of context to make me look bad, I'm not listing those things to criticize. I'm not saying that representation itself is a bad thing or anything like that. I'm just pointing out that all this stuff is in the show to illustrate to you how the creators came into this project with an agenda. And when in the last few years have you seen a TV show with a similar agenda which followed this particular roadmap and was actually good? Think about that for a minute. And that's just the start of it. You may have noticed that this review is a little bit different from my normal ones because I haven't gone over the plot yet. That's because there isn't one. I criticized shows like Agatha All Along and Ms. Marvel for wasting a lot of time, but I had no idea. This entire show is filler. Listen to this. These are the notes I took while watching the first episode. Peter is late to school. White people are racist. And that's it. That's all I wrote down. He does a little crime fighting around the neighborhood, small stuff, he catches a shoplifter, whatever, but most of it is just following Peter around in his personal life, which isn't even that bad or even interesting. He misses his train, so he's late to class and the teacher scolds him. Oh no! His platonic female BFF teases him about failing to ask out a girl he had no shot with anyway. Oh no! And it just goes on like that. Nothing happens in this episode. Nothing! And not much happens in the second episode either. My only real takeaways were that the people behind this project seem to not understand the Spider-Man character, not care about any of the lore, are generally being very lazy about how the show is produced, and aren't even trying to write a smart show because they think the audience are idiots. And when your show is supposed to be about a character who is really smart, you can probably guess how well that goes over. Here's a few examples of what I'm talking about. The spider that gives Peter his powers is no longer science-based like it's always been because he's a science-based character. Now it's a magical spider courtesy of Doctor Strange. Have I mentioned how much I hate the multiverse? Instead of being bullied by his classmates in school, now Peter is well liked by them. Hell, the crush's boyfriend wants to partner with him in science class, makes an effort to befriend him, and there's even a scene where he gets the entire football team to chant Peter's name because they like him so much. Peter, 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 Peter. What? This is Peter Parker we're talking about here. A character who, before learning that lesson about power and responsibility, wanted to use his powers for selfish reasons, partly because he was so angry and sick of being treated like garbage, bullied by guys like Flash Thompson, emasculated by girls like Liz Allen. It was one of the core things that aided him in those early stories. Now, there are no bullies. The girl he's crushing on is a perfectly nice person he's on good terms with. He seems to get along quite well with most people at school. He has plenty of people in his life encouraging him and cheering him on, so the motivation to make the mistake that defined his entire identity as a superhero is gone. He never learns the power and responsibility thing because he doesn't even become Spider-Man until after Uncle Ben dies. And apparently there's a prequel comic out there that doesn't really elaborate on that. He just became a superhero because he's a good guy, and that's what good guys do. And not only is that really f***ing lame as a storytelling device, more importantly, it's not Spider-Man! This is, let's make this character's life a hell of a lot easier, take away everything that makes him who he is and makes the character interesting, take away the crucial lesson that created his iconic moral code and spurred him on to become a hero in the first place, and then just have him become a hero anyway because it. Gotta fill the hours in the day somehow. Might as well web up some purse snatchers. And right there, you've missed the point of this character entirely. Peter Parker in this show has no flaws. He has no struggles. He's well liked in school, makes friends easily, good things seem to fall into his lap without him having to work for them, and any problems he has to confront are either very superficial, easily fixable, or they're just not a big deal. And you know what the problem with that is? It's f***ing boring. Where's the story here? Why are we supposed to get behind this character and root for him, or at the very least stick around to watch what he does, if you've taken away the hardships and character traits and learning experiences that make him who he is? And did I mention that this show is written by dumbasses for dumbasses? There were several times here where it felt like the writers thought the audience would have no idea what's going on unless they spoon-feed the story to us like we're f***ing toddlers. The first villain that Spider-Man fights highlights is some arsonist guy with a flamethrower, who the sound effects team may have thought was Shocker, but who the hell knows. The second he confronts this guy, the villain literally explains his evil plan. Guess what, webhead? A developer paid me big money to burn this place down so he could buy the property dirt cheap and put up a high-rise. Isn't that awesome? And then turns out he didn't bother to read the street sign and is actually burning down the wrong building. Get it? It's funny because he's an idiot.
Hello? That's not funny!
OMG. How will Spider-Man possibly defeat this incompetent, blithering buffoon? Quite easily, as it turns out. And speaking of idiots, the biggest one of all is our main character. Episode 2 ends with Peter's secret identity getting outed to Norman Osborn, but not because Osborn was smart or cunning or set a trap for Spider-Man or anything like that. No, it's because Peter, who's supposed to be a genius, mind you, changed into his costume in the Oscorp stairwell in the middle of the day in a building full of people who could walk in at any moment with a security camera 5 feet away pointed right at him. Are you f***ing kidding me? Are you serious? That is CW level shit right there. See, when you put stuff like that in your show, you're telling the audience, we think you're f***ing stupid. You're saying we don't need to try or work hard to make a good show with a compelling story and complex, interesting characters who can advance the plot in ways other than being f***ing stupid. We're already picked up for as many seasons as Disney thinks we're worth, so screw it. You get what you get.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
This might be the worst Spider-Man cartoon ever made. If it's not, and that's a big if, it's only because Ultimate Spider-Man was also a thing. But don't get that twisted. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is every bit as bad as you were afraid it would be, if not worse. Normally, I like to give a show a full season to figure itself out before rendering a verdict on it. It's very rare that the show ends up being so painful that I can't wait that long. In fact, I think the only other time that happened was the Velma review. That's the company you're in now, writers. Hats off to you. That RT critic score might be the biggest crock of bullshit I've ever seen in my life. Even the audience score is way too damn high. What show were those people even watching? Beats me, because the show I just watched was so awful it made me want to cancel my Disney Plus account purely out of spite. Believe me, I wanted this show to be good. It's been a while since we had a good Spider-Man cartoon. We were due for one, so I gave it the benefit of the doubt, hoping it would prove me wrong, and now I'm pissed off that I wasted 60 minutes of my life on this crap fest. Don't make the same mistake I did. I watched your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, so you don't have to. Don't give it your time, don't give it your views. You want to watch a real Spider-Man cartoon that gets the character, that has great stories and basically everything this show doesn't have? Dust off your physical media collection, if you're cool enough to have one, and watch the Spectacular Spider-Man. Best Spider-Man cartoon ever made, and exactly the kind of palate cleanser I need right now. And once you've done that, come back here, we'll write this off as yet another merry Marvel mishap, and continue counting down the days until Daredevil Born Again drops, while crossing every finger we have that they don't f that one up too. Happy New Year, my asshole. I can't believe this is how we're starting 2025, but it can only get better from here, right? Right? Thanks so much for watching. While you're here, ding that bell icon and follow all of my social media so you can always be notified when I upload new stuff. The links are down there. And this channel is a one-man operation. I do all this stuff myself. So help me out by smashing that like button, leaving a comment, hitting subscribe if you haven't already, making sure you're still subscribed, all the YouTube things, and I'll be back real soon, hopefully with something much better to talk about than this. See you next time.